Hi, my name is Colby Hamill. This is my Module 9 case study for AEP 855. Section 1 Summary of the case. Mr. Richard Inman is a first-year assistant principal at a junior high. James, a 15-year-old boy who is the leader of the toughest bunch in school, is repeatedly in trouble, but lately has seemed to be turning over a new leaf. David, an honor student, is never in trouble, always has good grades, and is extremely involved in music. James is called to the office because he has 3 tardies, but the teacher later mentions that she also saw him sharing something with David in class earlier, and has suspicion to believe drugs were involved. Both David and James are sent to the office and questioned on the matter. It is found that David was in possession of brass knuckles, which are considered to be a weapon and automatically constituted as a felony offense. David is taken into handcuffs, and James quickly states that they are his brass knuckles, and he only gave them to David to hold until the end of the day. Richard then believes that David will be released, but the officer explains that both boys are under arrest for possession of a weapon on school property. This is a regular occurrence for James, but David is in shock and terribly upset. Richard is unsure of what to do. James's mom does not seem fazed and tells the authorities to leave James in jail for a couple days. David's mom is extremely angry and demands for David to be released. Richard believes that David should be set free under the circumstances, but school policy states that he must be expelled. He files the expulsion paperwork for James, but throws away the expulsion paper for David. Richard's boss tells him that he needs to follow the policy and file the expulsion paperwork on David, or he will be reprimanded. Section 2 Legal and Ethical Issues. James used his abusive, authoritative power to convince David to hold on to his brass knuckles until the end of the day. This placed David in a position of uncertainty. If he were to tell James no, he suffered the consequences of a bully. Unfortunately, he decided to take the brass knuckles, which then caused him to be in possession of a weapon. The policy states that both James and David are committing a felony offense. Legally, they are both to be expelled and arrested. The difference in the two boys is that James has a record for repeatedly breaking school policy, but David is an honor student who has never been in trouble. Ethically, it would make more sense for Richard to give David grace for it being the first offense, whereas James has had trouble with the law multiple times before and would be considered as deserving of his expulsion. Section 3 Synthesized Summary. Richard, an assistant principal, is ethically and legally torn between suspending 2 students. James, a repeated troublemaker who would be considered deserving of this punishment, and David, an honor student who has never been in trouble previously and was only involved due to fear of James, because they were caught with brass knuckles, which is considered a weapon on school grounds and punishable by expulsion and arrest. Section 4 Synthesize the Facts. The list of people involved are Mr. Inman, David, James, school officer, director of secondary ed, the 5th period teacher, David's mother, possibly NAA reps, school board, and possibly some lawyers. Place that it took Rocket Junior High, the assistant principal's office, and youth detention facility. Public junior high school disciplinary educational programs were involved. Section 5. Review and prioritize the information. There is a lot of people going to be affected by the entire situation. Good or bad, there will be some people not happy with the outcome. Mr. Inman could be terminated for not following school policy. He could be reprimanded or face disciplinary actions for his decisions. David's future success could be impacted and affected. David's mother, who is very concerned for her son's future. Will James ever get help and stay out of the system? And the school policy needs to be addressed and may be adjusted. Section 6. Identify your options and possible consequences. Option 1. No action is taken regarding school policy. Mr. Inman does not file the expulsion papers. David stays out of the DAP program. Mr. Inman receives a reprimand on his file. Option 2. Action is taken that follows school policy. Mr. Inman files the expulsion papers. David attends the DAP program with James. David potentially misses out on future success. Option 3, the final option. Partial action is taken to follow school policy. With David having no previous bad history and no school infractions, as well as James admitting that the weapon was his, Mr. Inman could meet with the school board to find an alternative path or reassess the policy and finally reassess the DAP program as a punishment to school infractions. The incident could be reported into Mr. Inman's file, but no harsh action taken. Section 7. Evaluate your options. Option 1. No action is taken regarding school policy. David stays in school. Mr. Inman loses respect from the school board and staff with decision making and would be reprimanded. Relationships with students from the South Side could be affected. Option 2. Action is taken that follows school policy. David attends the DAP program with James. David potentially misses out on future success. Mr. Inman does not get wrote up from the school board. Relationships with the Amos family are affected. Lastly, Option 3. Partial action is taken to follow school policy. The DAP program could be reassessed for the sake of all students. The alternative approach could be denied by the board. Relationships with students, families, and staff could be saved. Section 8. Choosing the best option. Choice 3. Fight to reassess the school policy with the board to come up with the best solution and outcome not only for David's situation, but every kid after this that may have to deal with a similar situation. Policy is reassessed and adjusted to create exceptions for situations like this. David will hopefully not be expelled and be given a second chance on this situation with a policy that is not strongly backed. New policies can take a lot of time to rebuild and adjust, which could prolong a situation to come up with a decision. Section 9. Imagine implementing your decision. Mr. Inman needs to set up a meeting immediately with the building administration and school board to figure out the best alternative plan for David Ramos. David was pressured into holding the weapon for James. James made a confession that he made David hold the weapon and the weapon was really his. David was completely civil and followed all requests from the officer and Mr. Inman. David can still have a letter kept in his file over the incident, but refrain from any kind of expulsion from school. School board should reevaluate the DAP guidelines and procedures and adjust, add, or eliminate any misleading information. Mr. Inman should continue to build relationships with all parties involved and not let one incident dictate his mindset towards everyone involved. Reviewing all options and choosing option number 1 would then be the next choice. Reflection. This was one of the most challenging assignments I have ever had to do, but also one of the best assignments to help me prepare for a possible situation that could happen more than once at many different locations wherever I'm at. This assignment made me realize that there are so many more people involved and impacted by a decision of 1 or 2 people, and that anything that is done during the situation, during or after the situation, will affect many more lives. School leaders must make the best decision possible for the student and the school. How will they learn from what they did and the choices they made? Making sure that there is always a game plan to follow that covers every situation or category of situations you can think of would help a lot and keep stress off the administration having to figure out a solution for every single situation. If this was my kid, I would want my kid to be treated right, and if he has had a zero history with trouble, then that kid deserves a little bit of grace. Thank you.